Throughout this course, we've been working on strategies to inspire kids to think in new ways. And now it all comes down to this, where we crescendo our inquiries and accomplish the goals of Dimension 4. This dimension completes the inquiry arc by calling on students to communicate their conclusions of their inquiry and consider their obligations to take informed action. For this segment, I would like to talk about the two subsections of the Dimension 4 separately, but then explain how the lines between the two often blur. We will also consider the role of collaboration in Dimension 4. There are many ways that students could express their conclusions, from writing to oral presentations to debate to digital documentaries. In these collaborative settings, students are expected to react to, comment on, and potentially revise their arguments. This raises an important point. The C3 framework intends for students to work together throughout the inquiry process. In fact, collaboration is hardwired into all four dimensions, as collaboration is a critical inquiry skill. I encourage you to think intentionally about the ways in which students can collaborate through inquiry and then ultimately communicate their conclusions. Will students work together to create a digital documentary? Could students work together to write a letter to the editor? Are students working together to respond to a document-based question prompt? Staging these kinds of experiences isn't always easy, and nurturing these spaces takes work. Our role as facilitators is not always well-defined and at times a little messy. As you set up these collaborative spaces in your classroom, you may want to consider the following questions to help you better articulate the ways in which you not only cultivate, but nurture collaborative spaces. How are students assigned roles and responsibilities within a group? What are the various components to the final project, and will you provide formative feedback along the project's timeline? How do you ensure all students engage and participate in classroom projects? What are the consequences of disengaging or not coming through on a project? How should you empower students to manage a disagreement among teammates within a group project experience? Good social studies teachers know how to stage these experiences so that students use the collaborative process to communicate the conclusions of their inquiry and practice the skills that undergird civic life. Speaking of civic life, the second subsection of Dimension 4 highlights the endgame of social studies by providing opportunities to take informed action. This action can take many forms. It could be marching on City Hall. More likely, it would be writing a letter to Congress, creating a digital documentary that is shared in a community, or it could be working on a recycling project at school. The C3 focuses on being informed when taking action. Students in social studies use their C3 inquiries as a launching pad for action. C3's Dimension 4 guides students in doing three things as they move from an academic inquiry into the public square. Number one, understand the pervasiveness of a problem as well as its complexity. Number two, assess options for action given the context of a problem, and then, and only then, number three, engage in deliberative processes to move towards an action plan that addresses a problem. History teachers, in particular, will need to think about how they can bridge their academic inquiries about the past to present day. For example, a study about the legacy of the abolitionist John Brown might provide an opportunity to study modern-day slavery and those individuals who are working to help those enslaved. Two of my favorite social studies teachers, Joe Karb and Ben Higgins in New York, host a Speak Truth to Power video competition. Middle and high school students create documentary films that raise awareness about human rights defenders, and in doing so, speak truth to power. Over 250 schools across the country, with more than 4,000 students participate. I definitely encourage you to check it out. I also encourage you to think about the ways you could take inquiries that are anchored in academic questions and bridge them to action-oriented inquiries. You have heard me say this before, and I'll say it once again. This type of teaching toward action is not easy, but I promise you it will always be worthwhile.